Welcome to Remembering Your Oneness with Zane Daniel and Monica Kupiec, where we know everything, and so do you.
Aloha. Are you muted?
Uh-oh, am I muted?
I don't think I can hear you.
Oh, weird. Really?
No, I'm kidding.
Oh, okay.
I'm kidding.
That's a great way to start. Like, throw me totally off balance right away. Like, huh?
Oh, I always gotta give you something.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. It is 1 week before Thanksgiving in the U.S., and it's cold everywhere in the U.S., except for here in Florida where it's 82 or more, 85 or something, and it's cloudy, and yet I feel like I'm temperature degrees away from dripping with sweat. So it's very, it's very humid and so forth. But
welcome to my state.
Right.
not too much different than Hawaii.
Yeah. Well, then we've really got a lot to complain about, right? That we're both in incredibly warm weather in the deep fall of the U.S. So today's topic is a heavy one. And, oh, right, Jaber's weather is perfect here. Yeah, she's here too, yes. And
not too far where you are.
Right, the neighbor says that it's warm here in Georgia, so that's good. Yeah, we're not too far. So that's topic today, grief, and also we're going to touch on suicide as well. It's come up recently, and I have a very unique approach to suicide that I thought would be interesting to kind of express to everybody. And grief, I mean, I don't think we're going to talk for a full hour about this. I think we're just going to kind of touch on a few things and then see where we meander. But I did release a video today on grief, and I've got an activation if anybody's going through anything, any loss, and kind of how that emotion works, because I talk a lot about the lower vibrational emotions. I talk about fear and frustration and impatience and disappointment and unworthiness and shame and guilt and all that. But I don't, and grief is on that list, and it is in the lower vibrational category, but I still see it as quite a bit different than most of the other lower vibrational emotions, because grief is there for a reason. And a lot of times we think of grief as something that we don't want as we suffer with loss. And what actually is happening, though, in the case of grief, is that it is actually a healing lower vibrational emotion, which is a little bit strange. But to not look at grief as bad, but to look at it as a positive emotion that's going to take you through the healing process, as long as you follow it, as long as you don't try to run away with it, as long as you don't try to bury it all. And to actually embrace it and spend time in it. And that kind of goes really for all the lower vibrational emotions. Just running away from them doesn't help. Actually, allowing them to be felt and to dive into them and experience them is the fastest way, really, to get through a lower vibrational or a negative emotion. It's to say, hey, what does this feel like? How is this experience helping me? What is this experience? Is it physical? Is it mental? Is it emotional? Is it all of the above? And so with grief, it's really a great one, because it is the path to healing. And I can't state enough how important it is to go ahead and dive into it, because when you've had a loss, when you have a parent or a pet or someone who's very close to you pass, then you're often in the state of saying, you know what? The world's all screwed up. Everything is wrong with the world. You have this weird kind of flip that happens where you just go, nothing is as it should be. Things are not going very well. And somehow I've gotten off on the wrong timeline. It's what it often feels like. There's something
Yeah.
like, okay, how could it be that this person or this animal or whatever who's been such a part of my life is suddenly not there and will never be there? And that just feels so foreign and confusing that that it needs to be explored instead of fled from. Do you have any thoughts before I continue?
Yeah, I mean, when you were saying that, like, when you go through a stage of grieving or any other stages, it's important to like really dive into it, and that's really just kind of like what I teach. It's like you really want to feel each emotion that you're going through, and if it is grief, then take as much time as you need to feel this, and eventually you will move past it. Sometimes it could take a year or two or three, or maybe it's just a short grief like a week or two, but it's like you wanna accept that you have it instead of just putting it under the rug. It's like you don't wanna,
Yeah.
like, omit this because then maybe that grief is gonna turn into having anger issues or into a different type of disease or something like that. So it's like it's really just embodying exactly who you are right now, and if that is grief, that's part of you, then just really feel it. And you'll soon get the message that you need to, because you'll be in that such a low vibrational state that, like, you'll probably be able to, I don't know, like, get out of it in a more organic way than by, just pushing it off to the side, like, "Oh, no, I can't grieve right now. I have so many other things to think about or so many more things to do or other people to take care of." But you're not really being honest with yourself for taking that time to, feel or tap into those grieving emotions. I mean, it could be a loss of someone, but it could really be a loss of a relationship. I think that's also
Right.
grief. That's
Yep.
also grief. And I've definitely had moments when I've had like little flings and where I'll get emotional, I'll get sad, I'll do my own grieving in that sense. I can't really relate to people that have lost a significant other or loved one, so that hasn't really happened to me in my lifetime yet. I'm still pretty young, so I'm sure it'll happen sooner or later.
Yep.
But it's like for me, grieving, it's like when I grieve from a relationship, it's really just embodying it and then like, feeling sluggish, feeling like really bad. But then I'll have moments where I'll get out of it because I start remembering who I am and I start remembering the oneness of everything. It's like, oh, I actually feel that person in the ocean. Like that person is still there, but it's now translated into a different form. It's kind of like the whole unconditional love. It's like the people that have passed from our lives, either physically or non-physically, like they're still around, their love is still around. Like, I always kinda say that my mom is still living, but she lives miles and miles away from me, but I feel her when like I said, when I'm in the ocean with her, I feel her presence when I'm in nature. It's that love that I feel, that remembering of it all that is truly there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, now I've suddenly got a million things to say about all this. Kind of interesting how it blossoms. But but really, what you just did is you described the fact that your mom, who is still alive, is very far away, and so in that sense, it almost feels like, because if you don't talk to her for a long time, let's say, then it almost
Mhm.
feels like she kind of doesn't exist. But yet you still feel fine because you know that she does.
Yeah.
It's that she's not interacting with you at that time. So one of the approaches that I look at it as when I've lost people is that they it's just like that. It's just that they are in a place that I can't just call them anymore, and I can't
Yeah.
just get on the phone. But, they're in a place where there's no internet, where their phone has no connectivity, and they are still in existence. It's just not the same exact existence that we're in right now, and they're
Mhm.
just unreachable, because that new existence that they're in is actually better, in many cases, than this one, and so it's kind of great in a way that they're there. So when Amber just said, Okay, November 21st will be 2 years since my good friend took his life. Still so hard to accept. So that's another, then that's combining the two, obviously, grief and suicide. Um, to look at your friend Amber and know that that transition is amazing, and that your friend now is in a place where you can't connect to him, but he still exists, and actually he's probably still connecting to you, whether you've been able to detect it or feel it or know it or not. Most likely you have. And so from a it's hard to accept standpoint, it's just it's just different, it's just a new thing. And so 2 years of having gone through that, now it's surprising, right, that you still feel that loss. But that is very, very common, that we still feel that. So even if it's still now that you're experiencing that grief and you want to dive into it and really remember him and really experience his energy. And so if you were to go into a state like a meditation, and if you already do this, I'm sorry that I'm telling you what to do, but other people can learn from it too, is to go into a meditative state and go ahead and feel the energy of the individual, right? So you can start to tap into that and think about him and think about what he said or did or how he interacted with you or whatever. Then the next thing you know, you might feel all full body chills. You might feel something new or something different. You might see him in a new way in your mind's eye. You might hear his voice or something like that. And that is you connecting with his energy, and it still exists in the post-life experience. So it highly is likely that you're able to communicate with him if you choose to. And that is true for anyone who's lost anyone, that happens. So I'm not a medium. I do some channeling. It happens every once in a while. And every once in a while, it happens that I'm a medium. And so I might be talking to someone who has lost a person in their life, and I will just be tapping into that person's energy while they talk about them. And the next thing you know, I feel this overwhelming need to say something, and it'll be something that I don't have any idea what am I saying right now? And it's because they're talking to this person through me. And I feel this wave of energy come over me. I feel a difference. And then all of a sudden they're having a conversation with that person. Like I said, I don't do that as a part of what I offer to people, but every once in a while it happens. And it's really beautiful to see. And it can really help with the grieving process because, that person still exists. I still have connection to that person. And you don't have to use a medium to do it. You can actually tap into them completely on your own.
Yeah. I get that too when I do Reiki on people. It just comes through. It's not even intentional. It's just what that person needs in that moment. And sometimes it is tapping into, not even tapping into, but it is just that's what's releasing for the person. The need for that person to receive and have is that, that voice or that message from a person that they lost.
Right. And the other thing to know too is that when we transition into the post-life experience, if you want to tap into or connect with what many light workers and channels have been saying now for years, is that the earth experience is highly desirable. Lots and lots of souls or higher selves or whatever you want to say line up to be a part of this earth experience, and especially right now, this earth transition.
Mhm.
So when people pass, it's highly, highly likely that they're getting right back in line to come back. And this can be true also of somebody who's contemplating suicide. So what I often tell to people who are considering this is, you know what, it's totally up to you. It's totally your decision to go ahead and transition into the post-life experience if that's what you feel it is right for you. However, as soon as you get to that post-life experience, you are going to be saying, I can't wait to go back. Like, yeah, that was cool and all, but darn it, I want to go back. And so
Mm.
why not live out this adventure before you go ahead and end it? Because there's still many more years left, and this adventure is truly an adventure, even if it's miserable. I mean, Amber was saying that he was burned badly, it looks like, and then he went ahead and committed suicide. Like, that's a very interesting and logical choice, right? Because if that suffering is so bad that you don't really feel like you have any kind of quality of life, then it totally makes sense. And then we can get into the whole ethics of assisted suicide after a certain age, or from medical conditions or whatever, mercy kind of thing. And we could get all into that, and everybody's got their own opinions of what that all is. So it's not important for us to get into that. But
Mm-hmm.
but it makes sense. And yet, your friend Amber is already in line to come back, if not already on their way back. So that's something else to kind of rest in and understand, that, hey, they're not lost forever. They're never lost forever. And, to go back to the title of the podcast, remember our oneness. We are all in this together. We are all one. And when one part of us leaves, more parts of us come into existence here, and it's all the same us.
So, question for you, because I've definitely heard this multiple times or read this a bunch of times, is that when someone commits suicide, their soul kind of backtracks on their spiritual journey or spiritual path of awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of that, or your thoughts on that per
Yeah, my
se?
initial reaction is that is, once again, I mean, it's a little bit like institutionalized religion. These are the
Right.
rules. If you end yourself, then these will be the consequences. This sounds
Mhm.
very much like a 3D concept to try to
Mm.
keep people from committing suicide. This is
Fair, fair.
because that requires judgment, right? To
Mhm.
judge, to say, "Oh, you ended yourself." Well, then, as a judgment of that act, this is your punishment. Blah. Like the
Mhm.
unconditional love existence that we are all a part of does not account for judgment and punishment. It only accounts for what did we sign up for, and what's our reaction to what we signed up for. That's really what matters. So in Mandy's case, where she's saying, I'm constantly trying to distract myself from feeling because she doesn't like feeling, then that's what she signed up for. She decided to have difficult problems in this life, and which is totally her prerogative. Why did she do that? Because she had confidence that she'd be able to handle it, because she was powerful and she knew it. She had gone through other lives, and things had gone pretty easily and pretty well. Um, and so maybe on this one, she said, hey, I'm ready for a challenge. And so here she is, challenging herself with all these difficult emotions. What's the benefit of that is that at some point, she will say, finally, you know what? I can do this. And it
Mhm.
isn't that painful. It isn't that problematic. Look what I've gone through. Look what I've done. And she can celebrate how much she's done and how much she's overcome these issues. So, in every case, everything that we experience is something that we signed up for in the soul contract concept. And so if you including suicide, so you signed up for a life that led you to that, and then you went ahead and executed the contract. So
Mhm.
that is your experience, and so you come back and do it again, or have another experience completely. This whole thing gets very it really it can trigger people, right? It can really hurt
Yeah.
people. That's why it's interesting to talk about all of this stuff, and to begin that process of, okay, this is a great way to look at our existence. It's why I love metaphysics, and it's why I love New Age spirituality. It is the psychological um, cure for pretty much any issue that you might be having. You're not a victim. You've chosen this. You are experiencing this because you're so powerful. You get to have all these experiences. Like all of these different kind of metaphysical and new age spirituality concepts are extremely helpful in healing, but
Hmm.
they can be painful at first to because somebody who's really suffering, you tell them, well, you signed up for it, this was in your soul contract. They say, what? That is idiotic. Like, why would I ever do this to myself?
Yeah.
And you have to step back and say, well, the pre-life and post-life experience, you can't know what this suffering actually feels like, which is why you come here to try it out. So when you don't have any idea, or it's very foreign to you, or when you look at a human life in comparison to living infinitely, right? You live in the infinite now for all of eternity, and you always have and you always will. And then you go, oh yeah, I want to try one of these human lives out. Oh, this one's going to really suffer a lot. Okay, well that's fine, because a human life is like that, and then it's over. So I can suffer for 1/10 of a second. That's not going to be
Yeah.
a problem. But when you come here, it isn't 1/10 of a second. It's 70, 80 years or whatever. And so from our perspective, it's like, holy crap, what? There's no way I would sign up for this. But as soon as it's over and you transition to the post-life experience, you look back on that life and you go, oh, well, that was nothing. It's already over. Like, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, I could try that again. I could do that again. It isn't that hard. And so we continue to do this to ourselves, even though at the time we think there's no way. Why would we ever do this to ourselves?
Mm. So then a topic, I guess, or a question would be, if someone is feeling suicidal and then goes down the path of getting help and like overcoming the suicide, that's basically still part of their soul contract, is that you were part of this experience of being suicidal, but you did overcome it. So it's almost like if you commit suicide or not, it was still part of your, I guess, mission or
Yeah.
your path. Um, so then I guess forcing someone to help them, or forcing yourself to helping someone, you shouldn't also feel guilty for not helping enough. So it's also back to the
Right.
to the other person of like, okay, so now you're grieving because you thought you didn't help this person enough, but it's actually you should take a step back because that was their sole purpose or their experience. It's not your experience to try to fix it per se. And then that's when more, um I guess, undoing of that ego thought system should start to play out for you, is that it's really detaching from that other person's experience of like, okay, that was their time, that was their mission. Now let me focus on myself again and let me move forward with my soul mission per se. But it's not about forgetting them or, putting them off to the side. It's that knowing that they are their unconditional love self, doing what they had to do for their experience, and then got to experience a piece of them, or I can still remember the good times that I had with that person to reflect back to help me move forward. Or seeing them in that state is going to help you to not get into that state per se. It's like they're your teacher, they're like your ultimate teacher to help you move forward in your soul path.
Yeah, absolutely. That's perfectly said. And what I like about that too is that's yet another reason why it's so healthy to look at things from this metaphysical new age spirituality approach, because you gave the example of how to avoid feeling guilt and shame over not helping someone enough, judgment, to keep them from committing suicide. So now, if you don't look at it in the way that, hey, that was the person's soul contract, that's exactly what they signed up for, then you blame yourself. Oh my gosh, you could, and some people I'm sure feel like they killed the person, right? Like, because I
Yeah.
didn't do enough, I essentially murdered that person. And boy, what a horrible, heavy burden that they carry around with them as a result of that. Well, okay. So then we go to, well, what's the metaphysical approach to that? Well, you were supposed to carry around that burden of guilt and shame, and
Mhm.
and also you're supposed to transcend that. That is part of your mission here too. So it all just keeps
Yeah.
playing in, and playing in, and you can kind of, instead of being fighting and trying to get somewhere and trying to help this person, help that person, and then take so much on yourself, you can say, you know what? I am going to go through this journey as this incredible being who I can't even possibly know what's going to come up next. I have no idea what's going to come up next, but I
Mhm.
know that something amazing will, and I might as well just go along for the ride and see what it might be that I experienced during the process, because it's going to help me grow, it's going to help me expand, and it's my purpose being here no matter what the situation is.
Yeah. And it's really just holding space for that person that is, feeling that. So it's like instead of trying to fix them, it's like just send them love their way or just give them your presence. And it's like just spending as much time as you can before they do what they, signed up to do for themselves. But again, this is just like like you said in the beginning, it's a heavy topic. I think it still leads down to you as a person that you need to be aware of how you're reacting to situations that are like this. It's like, how can you step out of being attached to the outcome to seeing how it affects you? Because if you're constantly stressing that this person is going to end their life at any moment, like you need to see that it's really affecting you, and you need to take time to realign and readjust. It's not like you're letting that person go, but it's also like more important, I feel, to take control of yourself or to bring that, that oneness or that love back to you, because you're by putting so much energy out, you're not returning and you're not getting anything in return. And so that's depleting your energy and lowering your vibration. So it's almost like a pull and take type of thing, trying to help someone when that's just their soul, like you said, their soul path per se. That was their contract that they made.
Right.
And I feel like when that person, because that person might just feel the pressure of like, oh, there's so many people that want to help me, I'm just gonna do it to like take my life or whatever. So like they might just be really stress too. It's like, when should I do it? When should I not do it? And I feel like if you allow them to be, then perhaps they will then realize, wait, I don't feel all this pressure anymore. Like I can be myself again. I don't know. It's just a
Yeah.
thought that
Yeah.
ran through.
Right. That makes sense. And and for Amber here, it took me a while to stop beating myself up. Always like I could have said or done something different. Amber, think for a moment that you could have done everything different, and it still would have happened. You could have done everything completely differently, the best possible way that you could ever imagine having done it, and it still would have happened exactly like that. That's the soul contract. And what you're feeling now is part of the soul contract as well. So it might help you to finally relax and say, hey, I, and this is going to sound weird, but I am thankful for the role that I got to play in that series of experiences and events. And I look forward to the next one, whatever it might be. And that is the healthiest way to look at all of this, because otherwise you beat yourself up, you make yourself feel shame, and so on and so forth, which isn't helping anything, obviously. And again, you came here to transcend this feeling, and I have every belief that you can, and so can anyone who's suffering from this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You're wobbling. Making me feel uneasy.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I kind of feel like I felt that this was going to be covered fairly quickly. Anybody who's currently going through any grief or feeling of loss, let us know in the comments, and tell us what your unique experience is like or has been like. I know that we all go through it. We've all had it in some form or another. When I my 13-year relationship ended, I had to drive like 6 hours to another city, like the next day or something. It was pretty crazy, and I remember that it was pouring rain, and
Mm-hmm.
I was driving there completely by myself, and I just had this like horrible feeling of loss, accentuated by the downpour of rain and driving for 6 hours in this, driving away from that previous life into this unknown experience of, torrential rain, and who knows what's going to be for me on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So I've definitely experienced it, and driving down the road when it's raining right after a loss like that and crying. So it's raining inside. It's raining inside the vehicle, coming from my eyes. Then I totally get that whole experience very clearly, and yet at the same time, I knew the whole time that this was a transition to something brand new, and that whenever major transitions occur in our lives, whatever they may be, they are it's not just a loss or an end, but it's also a beginning. And you can look at that and be faithful that, hey, your spirit team, your guides are there to help you in this transition, and they're bringing you something amazing, so you can be comfortable in knowing that. Or you can say it, my soul contract, I've signed up for something brand new and something amazing, and I can be comfortable in knowing that, and trusting. It's the old having faith thing. We're here to have all these experiences, and when we align ourselves with the flow of whatever experience happens, then we're very likely to have very positive and beautiful and amazing experiences on the horizon.
Yeah. So Ember wrote, if you
Yeah,
want
I'm
to pull
seeing
that
that.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Right. So she's driving through a location, and you get the reminder, and yeah, and you try to concentrate on the good times that you had. Right. That's beautiful. And I would just adjust the word try, Amber. I would go ahead and say you do enjoy the good times that you had. I wouldn't say you try, because when you try, you're also saying that you're not actually making it. But
Mm-hmm.
know that you do concentrate on the good times. Now, if you're trying to concentrate on the good times because you're trying to avoid the grief or the pain or the loss, it's not as good as going ahead and just saying, oh wow, this is a great reminder of this amazing person, and we got to experience this and this and this and this. There's just a slight difference from avoiding the suffering of the loss versus celebrating the experiences that you had together.
Yeah.
So of course I'm always going to encourage you to celebrate more than avoid.
Yeah. Well, it's also her, when you drive, her response about, when you drive through a place and it reminds you of that person, it's like hard. It's almost like it's I guess like a trauma, right? Where
Sure.
even when I get it, when I drive through a town and I used to work there, or I'll pass through somewhere where I used to work, I'll be like, oh, like I'll just like cringe. But it's almost like it's just the way that you perceive something as that emotion, and you're embodying that emotion versus like being present of what is, versus you're kind of just living more in the past or the future. So just not like switching topics, but it's kind of along the lines of like passing through areas and grieving, I guess. When last week we talked about I think we talked about anxiety a little bit, of like asking and embodying that anxiety more, of like asking why you have this. Well, a couple days ago, I was driving and I like when I don't eat, I like get anxiety, and that was happening. So I was getting this anxiety, and I remembered the podcast, and like saying, like you told me, like, oh, you should dive into it. You should like ask it, like, why is it here? And I literally asked it, why is this anxiety here? And I got an answer of like, because you're thinking of the past and the future. You're not being in the present.
Living in the
And
moment.
and I'm like, "Wow, that was simple." And literally, like, I just started, like, doing some breath work, like, while I'm driving, and the anxiety was going away, and I was like, "Wow, it was only because I wasn't present." And that's kind of the whole situation of, like, you pass through an area and you automatically shift over to the past
Right.
versus the present, and that's what's causing those emotions to come up, like that grief. So I guess when you feel sad that your friend has passed, maybe try to dive into it, like ask yourself, why is this feeling still coming up? like really dive into like that why. It's like how I did with, why is this anxiety here? And I literally heard, because you're not being present. Yours could be something else. Maybe there's still some sort of communication you both need to have, but like Zane said, you can have that conversation with him. Like he's going to be come through with your intuitive voice. He's going to give you that little message, or maybe he's going to send you a beautiful sunrise or a sunset that you can enjoy for him. I was once shooting, some surfers, and I shot this one girl. It was a full moon too, a couple months back, and I got her email, and when I sent her the photo, she, like, opened up saying that her grandma had passed that like, last night, and I told her, "Well, she came here and gave you this beautiful sunrise and waves to provide for you." So it's almost like, where in your life, within the elements, can you feel your friend still? Because he's here with you, enjoying the present moment for you, or providing you a beautiful sunny day, or maybe he's giving you like a rainy day for you to cry and just to feel your emotions, but you're not listening to the elements because you're still tied up in the past of that grieving stage. So it's really about really coming back to the moment and seeing where you can feel him still currently, because I think that's what can help you move forward still with that grieving phase.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that a lot. That was a great tie-in, by the way. And one of the things that we do, and I bet you Amber does this, and you can tell me, Amber, are you an overthinker? Um, if you're an overthinker, that's one of those phrases that everybody talks about. Like, what you know, I could dive into what does that mean, overthinker. But ultimately, you are trying to solve problems. That's what's really going on. Yeah, there we go. Amber overthinks everything, right? So, what's overthinking? It is you trying to find solutions. So, your brain is very good at trying to find solutions. It's a survival organ, and its main purpose is to provide thoughts, solve problems, and predict problems so that we can circumnavigate them. So, you put your problem solving brain on, oh, how am I going to cook this meal? It's going to do really well. It's going to be like, oh, you're going to want to cook this first and that first, and you're going to use this pan and it works. Great. But if you put your problem solving brain as to, how can I bring my friend back to life? That's because that's essentially what's going on. Then your brain goes, well, I could have said this, or I should have said that, and if this
Hmm.
had gone differently, then I could solve the problem. I'm ready to solve the problem. Brain says, I'm ready to solve the problem. But of course, it's in the past, so the brain actually can't solve the problem. So then you feel frustration over, oh my gosh, if I'd have done this or if I'd have done that, why didn't I listen to my brain then? My brain's all smart now. Where was it then? Blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
on and on. Then you get wrapped up into these lower vibrational thought processes that just bring you frustration and disappointment and unworthiness and so on and so forth. So you're using this incredible tool, but you're just using it slightly incorrectly, I guess, for the best possible healing. So if you make a slight adjustment to it and say, okay, so I'm going to use this problem solving brain to figure out how to, and you could use Monica's idea. Oh, why am I still feeling this way? Maybe that'll work. Maybe it'll be delivered to you like it was for Monica, which was amazing. But maybe not, and it maybe that will also bring you some of the same, like, well, I don't know why, I don't understand, and you can go back into that same thought process. So what
Yeah.
I teach people to do is to put the process, the thought into, okay, let's go ahead and focus instead on how can I have acceptance? How could I have acceptance over this loss? How could I have optimism over myself after this loss, or the people that were in his life, or whatever? How can I have gratitude for everything that happened? How can I have unconditional love for everything that happened? That is a great way to use that overthinking mind, is to focus on how can you get to the places where you're going to have some growth, but an awful lot of relief and peace.
Yeah.
All right, so we have somebody from the eliminating group, and when you're writing from the eliminating negative entity attachments group, it just says Facebook user, unless you click on the little thing that tells you, okay, it looks like this is Cindy. Hi, Cindy. Thanks for sending this. We appreciate it. And yeah, that's what we wanted to do with this topic this week, is hopefully offer some different perspectives on how to handle grief and stress and suicide and all that. Because, okay, what's the correct way to handle suicide if you've been trained on to handle suicide? You're supposed to definitely, like, you never want to encourage them to. You want to make sure that they understand how great life can be, or whatever. Like, I don't know, I haven't gone through that training, but
Yeah.
when I talk to a person who has gone through that training, and I say, here's what I like to say to them: you can go ahead and do that if you would like. It's totally fine. You have total sovereignty in order to have a life or end your life. It's totally your choice. But here's what's going to happen. When you get to the post-life experience, you're going to go, darn it, I want to go back. So just that in itself is very powerful. And I've had people who were considering committing suicide. When I told them that, they've said things like, oh my gosh, no one has ever said to me I could go ahead and commit suicide, right? Like, giving that
Yeah.
someone permission to do that, it actually made this one person I'm thinking of in particular, he just said, wow, that made me not want to do it. Like,
Yeah.
because before I felt like I was fighting against society, because society makes suicide seem so bad that
Mhm.
in order to, like, to be, oh, what is it when you're a kid and you rebel? In order to
Mm.
rebel,
You
right?
do it.
Right, then you do it. So to say, hey, it's okay, I love you either way,
Mhm.
it makes you go, oh, okay, well then maybe I don't need to do that. I'm actually loved, and this person actually cares about me. It's kind of an interesting a juxtaposition that you don't normally hear about. So
Yeah.
I like to throw out these other possible ways to handle these sorts of things.
Well, it's kind of like what I was saying earlier. It's that you really want to let them be, and then they'll not feel that pressure to do it, because pressure is the same thing that society is putting on you, is that don't do it. It's the worst thing. Or spiritual people say like, oh, don't do it because you're going to go like 10 times backwards with your spiritual
Right,
journey.
or go to hell
Yeah.
for eternity or whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah, or it's a sin to go do it.
Yeah.
So, it's like it's very fascinating, like, when you really just, I guess, not necessarily detach from society, but when you make your own, I guess, your own opinion per se, or you really just stand in your truth, you'll kind of see how messed up the system is, or how messed up so many people have trained you to think a certain way. I mean, even when we grow up, like, our parents train us to think a certain way, and then we grow up and think like, what, like, how do I have these habits, or why do I keep thinking a certain way, or
Right.
this like feeling of lack, or something like that, or I shouldn't do this or that, or because it's going to make me feel guilty, or I'm going to grieve because I did something against what my mother said for me to do. So it's very fascinating when you kind of like not like stand in your own individually, but like the podcast is called, you remember your oneness, you remember who you truly are because you've shed all those layers of inauthentic behavior or inauthentic thought patterns, and it's going to take a while to shed all of that, or to even realize that you've been trained a certain way to think. But I think it's just gonna get even more beautiful then when you really start to just let go and just really be. And being is feeling the grief and feeling those suicidal thoughts and feeling anything, but it's not putting it away, because when you put it away, it's literally letting society win by telling you, oh, you shouldn't be feeling this way. Oh, depression is really bad, take a pill for it. And it's like you're surrendering to everybody else instead of surrendering to yourself, of like, wait, I really need to feel this depression right now. Like, wait, I need to feel this. I need to lower my vibration just a little bit so I can better understand myself.
So
And I
what?
think that's still part of the soul contract thing. It's like you were meant to feel this because you're gonna wake up from it and realize, oh, that was fun. Let me try again. Just the fun twist of it all.
Right. Well, I thought it just hit me. What if we thought about grief and suicide and really anxiety and any of these things from a fifth dimensional perspective? So 5D society. How does a 5D society deal with death? I think a 5D society deals with death in a very different way. It's very much like, hey, that was awesome. What a great thing. What a great person. This was so cool. Let's celebrate this, and and we'll get together and we'll say goodbye to their spirit,
Mhm.
and love everything there is to love about them, and have it essentially a celebration for their life. And nobody will be crying and nobody will be sad. Maybe a little, because they'll be like, oh, well, it's too bad we're not going to see that 3D being walking about. But here we are in a
Yeah.
5D society where we're just excited about everything that's happening and every transition and every possibility, because it always brings us something phenomenal. It's
Mhm.
just gonna feel very differently. I think in a 5D society, you probably wouldn't even see suicide as a potential thing, because you're in a state of constant unconditional love. So there's
Yeah.
really no reason to do that. So that brings us to, okay, in a suicide situation, that's what's missing, right? We're missing unconditional love for self, unconditional love for this experience. And so how can we bring people who are considering this as an option more unconditional love? Because even whether we're trying to prevent them from committing the act or not, giving them unconditional love is a beautiful act. Because, okay, let's assume that they're going to go ahead and do it no matter what we
Mhm.
do. Well, then let's just give them unconditional love for while we can, right?
Yeah.
Or if the unconditional love could help them not do it, great. Then we've had a double benefit from that. So I think that's the other thing, is that when people talk about committing suicide, they also get a stigma about them, and that stigma is that, ooh, gross, this person wants to end themselves. What's wrong with them? What a
Yeah.
screwed up mess that they're, ugh, I don't have anything to do with that person, or whatever. Like, I've seen all kinds of different layers of possibility come from that word, right? So if we drop all that stuff and just go, actually, the only thing that matters here is unconditional love, and so we're going to provide it no matter what the circumstances, then we're going to come closer to creating a 5D society. I mean, even a murderer, right? Okay, a murderer goes out and murders people. Wow, how do we look at them? Oh my gosh, we judge them. They're bad, they're terrible, they're awful. What are they doing? They're taking other people's lives. This is a miserable experience, a miserable being. And so they need to be punished. And so we're going to go through that whole judgment and punishment. But actually, what they need too is unconditional love, so that they
Yeah.
stop murdering people, because that's probably why they're doing it. So, it always comes back down to unconditional love.
So, just going back to you saying about the whole 5D consciousness. So then 5D consciousness is living in a state of unconditional love, because I mean, I feel like not like it's higher, but I feel like even at a 5D level, you could still have all of those thoughts, but maybe you're able to cope with them better,
Yeah,
or like just understand that, wait, there's unconditional love, so I'm going to choose that first.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're right there. It's that it's this nice bridge between this 3D experience and
Mhm.
the kind of like the post life experience. It's there are some rules. It's interesting. It's like there are some rules that are similar to this world. Like okay, we
Yep.
have we are going to be born and we are going to die. We are going to have change as we age. We're going to have there's still the concept of time. There's all these things that are happening. Okay, so many of those characteristics still or those rules still pass from the fifth to or the third to the fifth. So yeah,
Yeah.
we are born, we do die, and we have the perception of time, but now we know that we are the creator, we know that we are source, we know that unconditional love is all that everything is made out of, and so on and so forth. So we know a lot more about how the universe actually works, and so then we act accordingly. But still, yeah, you can still have fear, you can still have these things because death still exists. There is a way to die. So yeah, it is this interesting mix between the two, but unconditional love is the dominant emotion in that case.
Mhm.
Yes, I agree with what Jaber just said here, is that in 5D the concept of time is completely warped. Yeah, I mean we begin to see that warping as we move higher and higher in our frequency, but we even saw it when we were kids. We saw that time difference. Like, oh my gosh, somebody said, "Oh, you're gonna go. We're gonna go get your favorite food in an hour." An hour, oh my gosh, like an hour is forever. Like I can't even imagine. Like I'm so hungry. How can I live an hour? And then you get involved in something and you totally forget about it. You're building
Yeah.
something with your toys, and then the next thing you know, they're like, "Let's go eat." And you're like, "What? Really? Already?" So you already have that understanding of that warped concept of time.
Mhm.
But in the fifth dimension, you're even more able to actually kind of control it for
Mhm.
yourself. You have a lot more um, domain over the way that you perceive time. Right. And that's the truth. And because when you move beyond the fifth dimensional experience, all time is simultaneous. There is no past and future, and you are infinite. So this is like that transition from going from this linear time experience into the the infinite now experience. So it's going to be some weird amalgamation of the two.
Yeah. Well, it kind of reminds me of like when I did like DMT, 5-MeO MNT once, where it's like you literally get zapped into this, other world or whatever, and you literally have no sense of time, but it's really beautiful, or it's just like it's all just happening at once, and you get all these different visions. And then when you wake up, it's like, oh, that was only 20 minutes. Like it felt like an eternity. So it's almost like the same thing. It's that there really will be a time where you won't need to feel that, oh, when is this hour going to pass, or when is this conversation going to be over? So it's almost like you should just enjoy it. Like enjoy that feeling, or enjoy that bad conversation that you're having with someone, or like enjoy being drunk or something like that. I don't know. But it's like it's I feel like there will be a time when we wake up from this, it's like it's gonna be an addiction to want to come back here, and I feel like that's why we've been coming back here for so long, because it's so fun. And it's like it's kind of like you wanna determine or come to that realization of how fun this life really is and really live it. I mean, most of the messages that I've gotten from my psychedelics trips was to really live my life right now in the moment. And it's like, that's such a simple message, but it's also so simple to neglect it, or to like, "Oh, whatever, like, let me just enjoy my life. Sure, ha, ha, ha." But then, like, you realize that, "Oh, watching the sunrise is really beautiful and empowering for me, like, this is what ignites my soul." And do more of that, or acknowledge that, like, "Hey, I'm happy right now in this moment." Like, and that's just gonna raise your vibration even more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love what I want to comment on what you're saying there, but I put this up. So this is from Bernice, that her father passed from suicide, and she has unconditional love for his choice and courage, and made her love him even more. That is the most amazing statement that I've ever heard anybody say about
Yeah.
someone who has committed suicide. Like, that is the healthiest possible way that you can look at it. And I applaud you, Bernice, and in your resiliency in that situation. So, well, I had to post that for everybody to see. Like,
Yeah, I just
that's,
got goosebumps when you read it.
yeah, it's powerful, right? So I took a note. Oh, right. Okay. So you said um, we keep coming back here so that we can have fun, right? Like, and then I immediately thought, while you were saying that, Monica, of the people who might be watching or listening that are suffering, and they're like, "This isn't fun." Like, this is, you know, their classic phrase is, "Life is suffering," right? So actually, that's that took me to a thought of, have you seen that meme with the little boy who's got like a boot on his head and it's smashing him into the ground? He's like smushing to the ground and he looks miserable. And the line is, the meme line is, before spiritual awakening. Like, you just feel like the world is smashing down, right? Then the next image is of him with the boot is actually on his hand, right? And it's the same exact pose, but he's
Oh, wow.
putting the boot on his own face, and
Mm,
he's laughing now. And the title is After Spiritual Awakening, because you
you
realize
realize you
that it's not the rest of the world. It's nothing like that. It's you doing this to yourself. So if you choose to say, you know what, I'm suffering right now, but I actually recognize, there's a part of me that recognizes what Monica just said, and that is that this world is a fun place. And so I'm going to focus more on that. I'm going to stop putting so much pressure on myself. I'm going to stop making myself think about negative thoughts all the time. I'm going to stop all of the, feeling bad for myself all the time or whatever. And I'm going to instead find the fun, find the peace. You can be at peace anytime you want to. You can just simply be at peace, even if it's just for a
Mhm.
few seconds. You are already capable of being at peace. You might think that you need to get this in order, and you have to get a job, and you have to get a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a spouse and kids and all this other. You might think you need all this stuff in order to finally be at peace. But what you'll find is that you will always need more, and you will always be endlessly pursuing peace until you just go, actually, it's available to me right now. I'm going to go and have an experience peace in the now moment right now. And then once you've experienced it once for 1 second, you know what that feels like, and you can keep taking yourself back there, just because
Yeah.
you know that you have the ability to be at peace.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Wow. So here we are. It's already been
Look,
an hour.
I think this is where we're gonna be like, "Oh, the time, it's done."
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
So our 3D selves be like, "Oh, like that's it? That was an hour?"
Yeah. It went really fast. Yeah, it was a really good one. I'm glad we talked about all this, and thank you to everybody who posted some great thoughts on this and shared some of your suffering. Really, I really appreciate Amber providing all that, and Bernice and Jaybird and everybody who said wonderful things. We appreciate it very much. Mandy, I hopefully you're still there, um, and Ascetic, who said, "Wow, I love this conversation." Thank you so much, Ascetic. It's beautiful. And Aesthetic, you need to sign up for the program. The next one is in, what is it? It's less than 2 weeks away. So my next detached class starts November 30th. We're bringing people in for that right now. So definitely do that. And if you're interested in working with me directly one-on-one, if you sign up, we can do it so that you can do both. You can work with me one-on-one and you can attend the class. which I don't often offer because the class only runs every 2 months. So the timing is really right now to go ahead and join both.
Says, I know.
I know. She still hasn't done it. She's been wanting to for a long time. So come on, Aesthetic, let's do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm finishing up my 30 days of painting on the beach. So I'm on day 28 today. So I'll be posting about that pretty soon, of the reveal of all of them, which is pretty phenomenal. I have to say, when I put them all together, it was just like an energetic like activation. I was like, oh,
Nice.
there's something here.
That's awesome.
I need to dive into it a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait to see it all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're going to like post all of them at the same time?
So that way you can see them next to each other and kind of like feel out which one is calling you, and then they all have a message within them. So it's almost like picking out a tarot card or something. It's like, which one is for me to work with for today?
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have to go on to another call, so I must skedaddle. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Yeah, commenting and all that. I love you unconditionally.
Aloha.
Bye. See you next week. No, we won't do next week because it's Thanksgiving. So see you the week after that. Bye, everybody.
Bye.